So, the holidays are, well, at least Thanksgiving is behind us, and we're just about to come upon Christmas. But I want to talk to you a little bit about the holiday of Thanksgiving and how it all began. Well, there's a lot of controversy about how Thanksgiving started and where it started and what year it started. So they're saying that in 1621 was when the traditional Thanksgiving that we celebrate started in that year. Although they're all, and it would happen in Plymouth. Plymouth Plantation, Massachusetts is where the first Thanksgiving was celebrated. Although the controversy to that is that it also started in, I believe it's like Berkeley Hundred, Virginia. Also said that they were the first ones that had Thanksgiving. So I'm not sure. So what they're saying is that we're just going to call it 1621 in Plymouth Plantation, Massachusetts is actually the first Thanksgiving that was celebrated. What did that first celebration look like? Well, when the settlers were cruising along in the big old boat, they came upon land, and in that point, time of year, it was pretty cold. Probably what we normally celebrate now, November, it was very cold, and when they saw land, they obviously dropped anchor and decided to stay on that boat. The reason why is because it was just too cold to get off. Now, a lot of people on that boat developed a lot of diseases, one being scurvy, rickets. These are diseases that come from lack of nutrition, not having enough good food. So on a ship of 1,500 people, 750 of them died due to having these diseases. And of the 750 that were left, those people were sick, weak, just being around a lot of sick people and not having enough good food. Surprisingly enough, though, this is when the first panic attacks began. It was people living in these small ships and small confines and not being able to get off of those ships and living in very small quarters, sleeping side by side. People started to develop panic attacks. Of course, back then they didn't call it panic. I don't know what, they probably said they were just crazy. Some people actually took their own lives by jumping ship, which is how that first phrase, jumping ship, was developed or started, by people jumping over the ship because of their panic attacks. Now, as you can imagine, there was nothing to help these people, nothing that they could take. There was no Prozac or Wellbutrin or any other medicines. So a lot of them just figured they were going mad and decided just to jump over and take their own lives. You could probably imagine that the shark infestation was probably horrible at that time, being that those people that had already died, the 750 from disease, had to be thrown somewhere. So they threw them overboard, and then when people jump up, off, obviously that drew a lot of sharks around these big ships. When the weather finally started to break and the weather warmed up, people then decided that it was time to go on land. When they went on to land, this is where they encountered the first Indians, and the Indians came up, and the Indians could not speak English. So the Indians kind of had their own interpreter, if you will, Squanto. He was the one that he could speak English fluently, and the reason why is because he was kidnapped by one of the captains, ship captains, sold into slavery, and but Squanto wasn't having anything to do with that. He escaped, went to England, and then jumped on a ship and came back to the Americas. And then that's where he became the interpreter for the Indians or the Native Americans. And so when those the white man or the settlers went on to land, they met up with Squanto, who then taught them how to fish, how to hunt, how to, at that time nobody knew what the roots were or what plants were, what was okay to eat and what wasn't okay to eat. But Squanto knew these things, and he taught them the differences between what was something that was poisonous and something that wasn't poisonous, and what they could eat and what they couldn't eat. Well, so with all of this, you got a lot more people on land. Obviously, a lot more people that can plant crops, a lot more people that can harvest them. In like 1629, they had their best crop ever, and so even though in 1621 they're considering that to be the first Thanksgiving, and they had these little meals, but this was 1629 was the official Thanksgiving meal that lasted for 3 days. They all came together. People made food. That food was made by the crops that they grew. The Indians went out and killed deer. The white man made their traditional turkey and mashed potatoes and stuffing. All of that, they had those trimmings then as well. Now, the ironic thing about this was that way back then, Squanto must have been just ahead of his time, an extremely smart man, and knew that when they all came to the feasting table, that he ordered everybody to stand. And the reason why he did this is because I guess that standing back then, you would be assured not to get any kind of diseases. So even today, to this day in 2011, they've done research that said too much sitting could cause cancer. So Squanto obviously knew a lot of things that we didn't even, I mean, people probably thought it was crazy making them stand, but obviously he knew what he was talking about. So that's kind of like where the first Thanksgiving came about, and you know, we still celebrate that Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, of shopping and getting the deals and all the crazy stories that we heard this year of people shooting each other, spraying each other with pepper spray. People were taken to jail, all for a deal, all for a daggone Xbox or whatever. And I think that's just crazy. And you may wonder where that term Black Friday came from. Well, Black Friday is a term that's been used for many years in many different capacities, but generally Black Friday was referred to as a negative, had a negative connotation. But for Black Friday for shopping, it's meant to be a day of increased sales, because when a company is in the black or have a positive, that means that their profits are up. But I think Black Friday is starting to become a negative thing, because people are just crazy about shopping and getting that deal, and they'll go to all extremes to get that deal. So I don't know. I think Black Friday is becoming more of a negative thing rather than a positive thing. But I guess when it comes to money, I am sure the companies probably just don't really care. What they want is that those people in there shopping. So I don't know. So this year my Thanksgiving was really good. We celebrated with my family. Our family came together. We went to my husband's mother's house, my mother-in-law, and we had a great meal. The nice thing about going to somebody else's house is you don't have all those leftovers to keep eating. Although some people could say that's the negative to going to somebody's house, because you want to have leftovers. But I think it was good for us because we didn't need to keep eating all that stuff day after day after day. So that's a little history of Thanksgiving and Black Friday and what I did for Thanksgiving. So maybe you can share what you did on Thanksgiving.